Welcome to another edition of Really Political. I'm really sorry about that. That's Tom Arnold right there to my left.
Hi.
And I'm Chip Franklin.
Hi.
Good to have you here.
Good to be here. We've got a big show today. Very exciting.
Before we go to our first guest, real quick, what's your take on the conviction of Hunter Biden? I actually think in some ways that helps the Democrats because it shows you that the system is fair. This two-tiered nonsense doesn't exist.
Well, that is true. But it's really a personal thing, more personal to me, too. You know, Patty Davis, Ronald Reagan's daughter, wrote a great op-ed about, in the, I think, New York Times, about addiction, which is something Patty and I know very well. And the collateral damage it does, you know, how it hurts the addict, but it hurts the family. It hurts the people that care. And a lot of times when people get to court, you know, they got nobody because everybody they have, you know, they've hurt everyone around them and they got no support. And the fact that Hunter still has all that support from his family, like a real family, you know, showing up and very humbling and humiliating. Just you know, and addicts, we get sloppy. We do things. I mean, there are things that I did when I was using drugs that I would not even. I mean, it kind of takes my breath away sometimes when I think about it, you know, because I'm in a position now where I'm a single dad, got these little kids, and just how I used to live my life. You know, I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to be sober. I'm sure that he's feeling those things right now. You know, you look out, you see the family. I'm sure he's feeling a lot of shame. His daughter got up there and testified. His exes. Can you imagine if all my exes got up and testified? It would be so. You know, it's really about him taking care of himself. If he really wants to show his family, the people care about him, love, he's got to take care of himself every day, whatever that means. But there's no two-tiered system of justice. You know, in fact, I've always felt they went a little hard the other way to show the Republicans, no, we're really going to go in hard on our guys and Hunter and whatever. But he screwed up. He broke the law. He's guilty. There's no doubt. I can just feel it coming. You know, sometimes you get a lawyer that can get you out of stuff on a technicality, but the jury was great because they're sitting in there just saying, well, what do we feel is the truth? It's a terribly sad story, but it could have been worse.
I think that of all the stuff that comes out of that for me, though, Tom, is his father's complete acceptance of his son for who he is and what he's trying to be. And there's a lesson there across.
It's unconditional love. That is absolutely, and that says who Joe Biden is and Jill Biden and that family. You know, sometimes we call people out and we think, well, they're not human. They're all we know their names, so they're not human. And it is a lesson as a father to in unconditional love. And it just, no matter what you do, people can't take that away from Joe Biden. Right. That's who he is. I mean,
it means a lot to him. I think the people that care about him and the future of this country, that we have a compassionate, tough guy. He's a tough guy too. We'll get to that a little bit later on. A little bit later on, Max Brooks is going to join us.
Max, good.
Max, he'll be with us. We're going to talk about the European reaction to Trump talking about pulling out of NATO. But first, Lauren Windsor is our next guest. She is a journalist, founder of The Undercurrent, a documentary filmmaker, and right now a troublemaker, and we love her for it. She joins us here on Really Political. Lauren, first of all, congratulations. I think that this cemented in people's minds what they suspected. And again, I'm talking about.
Let me just say something, Chip. I got an email from you this morning that said, "Hey, it's exciting. We got the woman from the Alito tapes." I'm like, okay, I know Lauren very, very, very well. And I knew this was coming, and I just laughed because I thought, well, that's what I would have, if I would have bugged her, I would have been like, please do the show. But she was doing so many things. Anyway, she is unbelievably brave, unbelievably talented.
What time did you wake up this morning, Lauren, and start doing these interviews?
Tragically for me, not early enough. I was on this crazy adrenaline high yesterday and couldn't go to sleep until after 3 a.m. And so I woke up at like 9 o'clock and should have woken up much earlier because I just had a deluge of correspondence to get back to journalists like online, like on Twitter, and then like emails and texts. And so I'm trying to dig out of that. But
well, I think that
let me set the stage here. Okay. Lauren, who does this very important undercover work where she goes into places under her own name, by the way, which is what I wouldn't do that. She gets in and she gets these heinous people to admit to heinous things. I mean, it's really great journalism, and it's something we need more of. But she puts herself out there. Let me tell you, there's I tried to do one of those things with her, and she puts herself out there, and she said to me, "You should put a cowboy hat on." I go, "No, that'll be fine." And then of course you're like, "Oh, you're Tom Arnold. Get out of here. Mike Flynn doesn't want to see you." So, but I tell you, it's a lot of courage.
Well, let's get into this specifically, though. So
yeah.
What was this event that you spoke to Judge Alito and Martha Ann Alito, his wife? We all know the story of the flags and their next door neighbors. And I have the tape of him, and I have then the two. I cut Mrs. Alito into two different tapes. One where she talks about, having her own Sacred Heart flag, and then the first part when you have a conversation with her. Before we get into that, so how did you get that close to them, and how did they let you that close to ask these questions?
Well, the Supreme Court Historical Society, you can become a member and you can attend events if you buy tickets for them. And so I became a member and I bought a ticket to the event and I went. And, the first year, there were a lot more justices in attendance. And this was right after ProPublica had released its reporting on Clarence Thomas. And so, I was
for those that are listening and they don't know what you're talking. The report was about Thomas accepting these gifts to the tunes of millions of dollars, and of course, we all had learned earlier about Ginny Thomas, his wife, and she was on the mall on January the 6th, and her comments to Mark Meadows via text talking about not giving up the presidency, just crazy stuff. So go ahead.
So, in my wildest dreams, I was like, hopefully like Clarence Thomas and Harlan Crow will be there. And that was really, wanting to delve into, getting more answers on that reporting. But, there was a high likelihood he wasn't going to show up for obvious reasons. And he wasn't there, but Amy Coney Barrett was there. Justice Roberts was there. Brett Kavanaugh. There weren't any liberal justices there except for Justice Breyer, who had been the featured speaker during their lecture before the dinner. But I met the majority of them. I think I at least shook hands with all of them. I want to say that Gorsuch was there, but I don't remember that specifically. He may not have been there. I do know for sure that I shook hands with Brett Kavanaugh and, obviously Alito, because it's in the tape. But, I had the opportunity to talk to him after dinner. And, at the time, there had been this, brouhaha about finding the Dobbs leaker, and people suspected it was him. And so I had to kind of tiptoe into that conversation. And I felt like asking a broader question about the polarization that was happening in the country would be the best way to do that, so not to were you able to find the Supreme Court, the Dobbs leaker, might have been a kind of harsh, aggressive opener. So, just more broadly opening it up. They ask you, not to discuss, pending cases before the court or, court business. You might be asked to leave the grounds if you do. And so I had to be very careful. And
didn't they do a background check on you? I mean, didn't they know of your past?
Apparently not, but I don't think that's the way the background checks work in these situations. They're not doing a social media vet. It's
right. Lauren, let me ask this. What's it look like? You're in there. Are there tables in there? You're eating dinner at tables, and then you walk around like a cocktail party or something and get to talk to everybody? Or is there a line? You get in that line, you go by. Do they have their robes on? Or are they,
they're socializing. It's not like that. They don't have their robes on. That's funny. But, they have a cocktail reception before the dinner. And actually, it was in two different places in the court between the years. The first year that I went in 2023, it was kind of in a nicer space where these like open salons in like sort of a wing that was like off of where the court and the main hall are. But they had it downstairs this year. And so when you walk in security, you like walk out and you're basically like walking into what looks kind of like it's like a big marble hall that has like exhibits or like about the Constitution and stuff. It has, kind of a museum quality to it, but they'd set up these, standing cocktail tables and had some bars and had a couple food stations. And so people are just like milling about, and it seemed like less attended than the year before, but you just kind of cruise around and see who's there. And sure enough, like for a while, actually, though, I think it was like for the first 30 or 45 minutes, you didn't see anybody. And so, I finally am sitting there. I'm like, oh, I mean, it's just like no one going to show up for the reception this year because of all the scrutiny on the court. Maybe people just show up to the dinner. And then I look over and Alito's right there. And I was like, okay, I mean, this might be, ideally I would want to talk to him after the dinner, after he's had a couple glasses of wine. But, you got to take your shots where you can get them. So
and did you have a phone? Did you use your phone to record?
I'm not going to talk about methodology.
Okay.
But, we have an audio recording, and, it's not illegal to record in the Supreme Court building. It's, they have a prohibition in the courtroom itself. Like the Supreme Court itself, you cannot do a recording in the courtroom. But outside of that, there's no prohibition. There, was a prohibition from the Supreme Court Historical Society on camera use. So,
yeah. Okay. And by the way, so she registered. It's important because I've seen a couple reporters are such jealous bitches, man. I've seen a couple like, this isn't the way that we do it.
Yeah.
And BC, but she did this thing, and then people are criticizing the way Laura did, but she used her own name. It's their fault if they have it because she's got a big body of work and paid. You have to give a credit card or whatever. They have to. So, and it was at the Supreme Court's is a public place, and it wasn't where they do the whatever. So there's absolutely nothing. If you have a problem with the way she did it, it's because you didn't think of it or you didn't have the courage to do it. Because
and they're taking all your information. They're reporting on your information, right?
For sure. There's a lot of pearl clutching going on with this, but it's, what are you hoping to accomplish? I even had like some reporters yesterday, like, do you think that, they would give you different answers if you identified yourself as a journalist? And I was like, Jesus. You got to be fucking kidding me. Like, how are you employed at a major mainstream publication?
Okay, I want to play a couple of the sound bites here.
This person out or the publication out, but wow.
I love the way you speak with them because it's really it's masterful the way that because you have the questions down perfectly and the way that the responses come. I mean, I'm going to play Alito first, and then I'm going to play Martha Ann Alito secondly. But this first one is your conversations with this, and I got it from your Twitter feed. So there's closed captioning for people that are watching this. If you're listening to it, we'll talk a little bit at the end and recap. Okay, here's listen to this.
I don't know that we can negotiate with the left in the way that needs to happen for the polarization to end. I think that it's a matter of winning.
I think you're probably right. I think one side or the other is going to win. I don't know. I mean, there can be a way of working, a way of living together peacefully, but it's difficult, because there are differences on fundamental things that really can't be compromised. Really can't be compromised. So it's not like we're going to split the difference.
Wow.
Yikes. Yikes.
When you were listening to that, was your head going, "Oh my God, he's saying this out loud"?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, in the moment, I'm like, yes, this is exactly like what I was hoping to get, like some indication of bias, because, theoretically, and it's, a foundational principle, like bedrock to our democracy, our judicial system, is the impartiality of the court. They all pretend to be impartial in their Senate hearings, right? They can put aside ideology, put aside their religious beliefs, right? But this is verbal confirmation out of his mouth that some things can't be compromised. So, if I were a reporter for a mainstream publication, I might try, when I'm next reporting on the court, to ask them, what are these things that are not uncompromised? Like, what are the things you're not going to compromise on? Because certainly that's going to affect how you rule in these, life-changing court cases. And the American people deserve answers. And for me, like, to go back to what Tom was talking about, these journalists who want to act like I, committed some huge journalistic crime, like, there's a long tradition of undercover journalism. And in this particular instance, I think that it is justified to use these means when you have an institution that is shrouded in secrecy and is evading any attempted accountability whatsoever. And then, discover that one of the jurists is, accepting millions of dollars of, crazy gifts, like nothing that any reasonable person would consider like rational. If Clarence Thomas were only going on, expensive vacations with Harlan Crow, would we be talking about this? No, we wouldn't. But the fact that Harlan Crow bought his mother's house, paid for his nephew's tuition, he had like a free RV loan, essentially. We have no answers on, who ultimately paid. Well, we know that he had a loan and that ultimately wasn't repaid. But we're just supposed to be like, okay, just do it.
Kavanaugh's mortgage.
Yeah.
Right, but all in the name of decorum. Like, no, I'm sorry. It's not okay.
ProPublica is great work. I mean, they don't get enough. They do great work in a lot of areas, a very comprehensive work. And when they first started talking about Clarence Thomas and wrote about, there's a lot of people on the right. They're like, they're attacking him. They're attacking poor Harlan Crow. That's mean. That's mean. But I think now people are like, when you see the chart of how much sent to Clarence Thomas, $4 million, and then little tiny things that the rest of them, it's a problem. It is a big problem. And I think too, with Alito, these guys they feel wronged. They feel their feelings are hurt by all this. Clarence Thomas, how dare, and their wives' feelings are hurt. And it's weird because they're members of the Supreme Court. You think that would be enough. But I also think that they're nerds. These people that get up there and study and then get the Supreme Court, they're nerds, and they like the attention. You can tell the Alitos love the attention.
Interesting. Yeah. Let's play Mrs. Alito's comments. The one about the flag, the Sacred Heart flag. Listening to her just before this, I played this for you though. Listening to her, I got this real strong sense, and I grew up with a single mom and 4 older sisters, so I love strong women. So this is not a knock on her being strong and having an opinion, but it seems to me that her opinion, she was not appointed to the Supreme Court. Her husband was, and we all know that obviously we talk to our spouses and we have interest, but I just, when she was speaking, I got a cold chill. I mean, I really did. Listen to this. This is the one about the flag.
You know what I want? I want a Sacred Heart of Jesus flag, because I have to look across the lagoon at the Pride flag for the next month.
Exactly.
And he's like, oh, please don't put up a flag. I said, I won't do it because I'm deferring to you. But when you are free of this nonsense, I'm putting it up, and I'm going to send them a message every day. Maybe every week I'll be changing the flags. There'll be all kinds. I made a flag in my head. This is how I satisfy myself. I made a flag. It's white, and it's yellow and orange flames around it. And in the middle is the word vergogna. Vergogna in Italian means shame. Vergogna. 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 Shame on you. Anyway.
Well,
I just wanted to let you know you have a lot of people rooting for you. Thank you so much.
Okay, let me say. I'm going to say something. She's pretty hilarious character. I mean, she is a hilarious character, and you know,
I mean, if the world weren't hanging on the line, Tom, it would be funny.
Well,
but
she's like Martha Mitchell, man, and she's probably read about Martha Mitchell. You know, she has friends at the Washington Post, the Ms. Alito, who were afraid to do the story about the flag originally because she is hilarious at parties. I mean, there's some boundaries crossed there.
Can I jump in real quick? Remind people, if you don't know who Martha Mitchell is, John Mitchell's wife from back in '72 in the Nixon, you got to go back and read about her because she was a trip. She really was. Go ahead.
Yeah. And Julia Roberts played her in the series. It's pretty good series. So check it out. She's great.
So listening to her and putting all this, as this all came together, how long were you actually doing these interviews? And how did it end? Did it end with you just saying, I have enough now, or did they leave? Or I mean, at the end of that, did you really have a sense that they were fully buying who you were?
Well, when you were doing these interviews, I mean, we were having conversations, obviously it wasn't like an interview. It's like, talking to somebody for like 5 minutes, you go up, introduce yourself, have a conversation about something. And, it was friendly and cordial. And
is there part of you that feels sorry for them knowing you're about to blow up their world?
No.
I mean, there's always a sense of empathy that I have with people that I am about to release news on. But that's why I don't go after like civilians. So, and I hate the comparison to James O'Keefe, but inevitably it will be made. And, the difference for me is, is someone a public servant? Is someone an elected official? And in the case of Martha Ann Alito, people will say, well, she's the wife of a Supreme Court justice. She has privacy rights. Well, if she's going to be injected into the political conversation by her husband, and she's going to inject herself into the political conversation. When, she's flying these flags, does she have First Amendment rights? Sure, she does. But when those are political flags that are, bringing the impartiality of her husband to bear in every term is consequential, but this one is so consequential when we think about, the January 6th and Trump immunity cases and everything that's about to come down with reproductive rights. And so I just, in her case, she is not above, accountability here.
Right. No, she's a public figure. She's a public figure who publicly flew the insurrection flag right after the insurrection, whose husband has publicly spoken about her. He threw her under the bus. He said, so she, coming into this thing, and by the way, this was last week, Chip. She was there last week in the Supreme Court. So she's coming in there, and she has to have some sense of awareness. But she feels wrong. So everything she said, besides getting to know her personality a little better, they didn't track down, their kid somewhere at work. And this is just how it's done, because she is now a face of those two, the Alitos, that's who, and she put it right out there. And you know what, when you put it out there, you better be able to back it up. So I think plus I think she loves doing it. I think she's listening to everything Lauren put out the last couple of days, reading every comment. I think she loves it.
Well, I got to say this. I just think that what you do, Lauren, is so important. So many of us talk about things that need to be done. My wife and I talk about it all the time. We're not moving. We're staying here. We grew up in D.C. We politicos our whole lives, right? And to see what's happened the last 10 years, it's unfathomably horrid. And that people go out there like you. And I know people think you get millions of dollars overnight from this, right? and you get death threats and you get support. But most, I know a lot of negative shit comes your way. And I know I'm speaking for Tom when I say how much we really appreciate it and how thankful I am that people like you go out and do this, because people have to know that where we are, we are on a cliff's edge. And
the thing is that Lauren puts herself out there. She's not a great big woman or dude. She goes in by herself. I'm gonna tell you, man. She goes in by herself. She when she talks to them, she's talking as the person. I don't know. Did you grow up in Nashville or something? You got that son that you bring that out, and but it's a like I say, I was there once when it did not go well, and it went well for me because I thought it was great. But I think that's vulnerable. I'm always concerned about you doing this, and I think that the things have grown in the world of journalism where you're getting the respect that you. Because she's been doing this a long time, Chip. She's done some things that are, to me, even, that are funny, that are dealing with the worst people, the Matt Gateses and these people. But I'm glad that she's getting the recognition that she needs. And she did tell me last week, something big is coming, and I'm going to give you a hit. And I'll blast it out there. Of course, my first tweet, she goes, "Take that down. You just gave everything away." But it really is big. And this story built yesterday. The first time I saw it on a TV, and then it built, and then it was everywhere. Everybody found a version of this to go all in. And sometimes stories, when you do something, you release this thing, this tape, this whatever, that's it right there in that moment. That's it. It goes away. But this thing built and built and built, and still is. And that's really important, and it's really good for Lauren, and it's good for us Americans. I love
it. Really, no, it is. It's a huge, I mean, I know in the middle of it right now, but I saw this and everyone's talking about it, as they should.
Yeah.
I know you have been up all night, so we're going to let you go take a nap. Thank you so much. And, we'll stay in touch. And, if we can ever help in any way, please let us know. Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Chip. Thank you, Tom.
Lauren, I'll talk to you soon, kiddo.
Right.
Great job. Great job. I'm proud of you.
What a stud, man.
I know you. I'm proud to be her friend. She's a real deal, and she's a human being too. And but she is amazing. And so I'm happy.
I was, and again, I find that Tom Arnold freaking knows everyone. Every guest we bring in here, there's some 6 degrees of Tom Arnold. Our next guest is Max Brooks. He's not only an actor and author and Hollywood royalty, right? I loved watching him with his dad during the COVID through the glass doors. It was wonderful. World War Z, I read without knowing it was him, and blew me away. And then he blew me away even greater because it worked on 2 levels. It wasn't just a book about zombies. It was actually had a much deeper meaning to it, and we can get into that later on. But he's also a senior fellow at the Modern War Institute at West Point, New York. You ever been to West Point? Unbelievable, beautiful.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and he was recently a part of a.
And let me say this about Max. Anytime I see him on TV,
there he is. Tell him right now.
Takes me a minute. There he is, Max.
Hey, Chip.
Max. Anytime I see you on television talking about what the state of the world or whatever, it takes me a minute. My eyes have to go, wait a minute. Is that little Max Brooks? Is that the kid from that was on the show? And now he's, you got to rejigger. Yeah, because he also, to go from, this, to be different than your crazy, famous, respected father, to really go in on this and do all this smart stuff that to be able to communicate that doesn't happen in our business. Our business is like, okay, you do this one thing and then this, and you don't do it quite as good as your folks or whatever, but you got a whole different thing. I mean, you really are amazing. I do love the father-son stuff, of course, because I'm a father, but you got to listen. It takes you a minute and you start listening to this man on Bill Maher or whatever. And you're like, whoa, he is extremely smart, and he's sharing stuff that I was not aware of, and it's not show business. So thank you, Max.
That's a difficult task too, is to be able to take extremely complex situations and put them out there so people can understand. Talk a little bit about your trip to Europe, and I mean, I saw JD Vance on, I think with Jake Tapper, trying to say that there's no way Putin would ever go into Poland and through. I don't know. I don't know where that's coming from. And we all remember, of course, Trump's comments about that. Let them do whatever the hell they want. What was your takeaway? What are the European countries? How do they feel about a Trump presidency and what that would mean to NATO?
Well, they didn't talk politics, but they talked policy. Mm-hmm. And, what's very, very dangerous, and this you said, like, where does J.D. Vance get his talking points? I'll tell you exactly where he gets his talking points. He gets them from Moscow. Right. And this actually started in the 90s. This started right after a war called Desert Storm, which we fought for deterrence. We thought that if I don't know, it's hard to remember this, but at one point the Iraqi army was the 5th largest army in the world. Mm-hmm. And we thought, now that the Cold War is winding down and the American century is really taking off, if we could atomize, just annihilate the world's 5th largest army on this brand new platform, CNN, 24-hour cable news, that would deter aggression. We would say, if you mess with America and the West on the battlefield, we will destroy you. Mm-hmm. That's not the lesson our enemies took. The lesson was, okay, we got to do it off the battlefield. We've got to find alternative ways, things like cyber and economics and messaging. And messaging is critical. And since Putin came to power, they have been pushing a set of talking points that have been picked up by people now within our government. I mean, there are people who do nothing but track where this comes from. Mm-hmm. In fact, a side note, their talking points were so good during COVID, the Russians lost people to COVID because they created their own anti-vaxxers. The message went out into the West, but then came back through social media to their own people. And so because the Russian vaccine was actually very good, but some people didn't take it because what they saw on social media, not realizing it was their own government's talking point meant to get Westerners killed. So they push this. And one of the myths they push and have been pushing for years is that NATO is an American imperial system. That sort of it's America pushed, and it's been gobbling up countries since the 90s, which is crazy because, number one, you really got to work hard to join NATO. There's a list a mile long of countries that have been wanting to get on for years, but there's a lot of hoops you got to jump to get into NATO. Number one. Number two, NATO does. By the way,
do they have to get a NATO? Does every NATO country have to approve you?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is that NATO is a 100% consensus-based organization. They don't do anything without a unanimous vote. So it's not like America can just push its agenda. Literally, Denmark could raise its hand and be like, I don't want to do this. And boom, the resolution's dead. So when NATO moves, it moves as one. And what the Europeans are realizing is we have been asleep at the switch for way too long, and we've taken our security for granted. And not only have we not invested in these organizations like NATO, it's sad and it's hard to say, but we haven't invested in the physical means to deter aggression because, psychologically, and this is tough for people like us, we're liberals, we want to hug everybody, but it is hard to admit that there are times in history when the more you give someone, the more they take. Mm-hmm. That was the case with Putin. That was the case with Mussolini, the Imperial Japanese in the 30s. And it's totally the case now that Putin will just keep going. And what's so scary, this is the terror that has gripped Europeans in the know and should be gripping us. If Ukraine falls, he might miscalculate again because he totally miscalculated. This is the problem with dictators. Mm-hmm. They're surrounded by yes men, and they can make horrible mistakes that set the world on fire. Putin did it with Ukraine. He thought, I'll be in Kyiv in 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So horrible miscalculation. He's not above doing that again. He's not above saying, all right, if I roll into Latvia, Lithuania, even Poland, and I do it really fast, I can do it before NATO gets its act together. Mm-hmm. And that's a horrible miscalculation, but there's nobody around him who values their life who will say, please don't, no. Mm-hmm. So Ukrainians are fighting and dying to keep Russia from starting World War III. And that's really what NATO is. It is the greatest guarantee that we have right now that our kids won't be drafted to fight World War III.
Hey, I'm going to ask you a question. So the rise of Germany in the 30s was a direct result of the Treaty of Versailles, a dozen years earlier, right? Was the fall of the Soviet Union, do you think, their Treaty of Versailles moment that created this Putin rise?
In a way it was, because I was in Russia in 94. And I saw a country just devastated because, in the West, we saw the end of the Soviet Union as sort of a mutual agreement. Like, oh my God, we're happy and they're happy and everything's going to be great. I went over there and they understood that they lost a war. They lost the Cold War, but they were expecting a Marshall Plan.
Yeah, I was about to say, right.
They thought, well, what you Americans do so wonderfully well is when you defeat someone, you come in and you rebuild them. And that's what we used to do. And they were waiting for that. They were waiting for the American Marshall Plan to come in and invest heavily in the old Soviet Union and rebuild it. And
we didn't do that in Afghanistan. We could have gone in Afghanistan and created,
that was the problem in the 90s. Since 9/11, the problem in Afghanistan is instead of having a 20-year plan, we had 21-year plans. That's what screwed us up.
Yeah.
Because boy, did we invest in Afghanistan, but it was just like short term after short term after short term. With the old Soviet Union, we didn't invest at all. And they watch, and I literally met with a diplomat when I was there in the 90s. And he said, like, the Russians are watching their country going from a massive industrial superpower to an exporter of raw materials. And in that vacuum, Putin roared in. And he gave the Russians something that's deeply embedded in their culture, which is love of their empire. And I'm not talking the Soviet Empire. I'm like way back to Peter the Great. Because we love Gorbachev, right? We grew up, in the 80s. We're like, oh my God, he's peaceful. He ended the Cold War.
Perestroika.
Perestroika, glasnost. They hated Gorbachev because he gave away their empire. And also, an empire to the Russians, to them, means a buffer zone against enemies. They're a deeply, deeply paranoid people. So when Putin spins the yarn that NATO is aggression and expansion, it's coming for them, they believe it. And he's convinced people on our side to believe it. None of that is true at all. But like I said, we've been asleep at the switch for a whole generation, and we've let those stories, that narrative, sink into the back of people's minds.
Yeah, Max, as you were saying about dictators, they can't control themselves. And we have to accept that he's just going to keep, if he can, he'll just keep doing this. Even Hitler's like, yeah, I'll go into Russia now. Like, I'll go in. Yeah. I mean, there is this self-fulfilling prophecy. There's a lot of awful stuff that happens first. And do you think people are aware? We're Jewish, you and I. We kind of, I don't know if it makes us more aware, but you're kind of aware of history and how things could go. Do you think that there's any awareness on the right side of politics in America about the 30s in Germany and what that exact, where everything led to, how it got there? Do you think people don't care about history?
No, I mean, people have never cared about history. I mean, this is especially Americans. Oh my God, we don't care. I mean, literally, World War I had just stopped. And we walked away. Like, World War I ends 1918. We literally walked away from Europe in 1919. That's how short our memory was. So no, we don't care. And so what we also don't understand is that for decades, we have been growing a national security policy of sheep and sheepdogs. Remember when George Bush said after 9/11 on 9/12, he's like, all you need to do, America, is pray, hug your kids, and participate in the economy. Well, that had been building for some time. Yeah. And that's another reason Putin's got us behind the eight ball. Russia it's a crappy economy. Its population is dying. The age of the average Russian is like 52 years old. However, Russia's all in. And China is all in. Iran is all in. Every sector of their economy, every sector of their population is managed by their government for their national security. Where with us, we've got, I think it's less than 1% serves in uniform. and even with the Department of Defense and all these other sheepdogs, it's tiny compared to the rest of us. You know, we don't even understand how we fit into the bigger picture. And we don't even understand that our values that my dad's generation fought for, they don't just happen. People actually have to do something to preserve them.
You know, it's interesting to you mentioned the Middle East. Both Germany and Russia don't have any theocratic sort of background. We seem to be drifting toward that currently. I didn't play the Mrs. Alito talking about her background being from Germany, and you don't want to mess with us Germans. It was pretty.
That's true, though. You don't.
It's like the Norm Macdonald joke about what Germany, they declared war on the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. I find it confused. It confuses me because the drift towards theocracy bothers me just because there's no accountability when you throw God into the mix, right? You know, I remember hearing Biden complain in the 90s about not bringing Ukraine under the fold of our assistance, and in fact, to the point where Clinton had to tell him to shut up. You know, it was like, but why didn't we do something a la a Marshall Plan in the 90s when we had that opportunity? Did we really think that they were going to figure this out themselves, or it was like Charlie Wilson's war at the end when they said Afghanistan, whatever this place is, it's all done now. Charlie, let it go.
It comes back to, it started way before this. It started in 1980. It started with the Reagan Revolution. And the Reagan Revolution's attitude was that government was bad. All these big things that Franklin Roosevelt built. Because let's remember, the American soul is an isolationist soul, not just isolating from the rest of the world, but isolating from each other. Like, leave me alone, right? Rabid individualists came over on boats to say, leave me alone. I just want to do my thing. And Reagan,
and if you don't, I'll kill you.
Right. But Reagan tapped into that. He said, government is bad. Nation building is bad. The big stuff that we used to do, forget it. Forget it. Just go on about your business. And Clinton totally jumped on that. Clinton was just like, hey, listen, I just want to be president and whatever works. And I'm totally in that. And remember, everybody was in that. Even Biden. Biden's the first president in my life that said Reaganomics did not work. So
Bush 41 kind of said that in 1980.
Right, but that was a long time ago. Yeah. But when the Soviet Union collapsed and there wasn't a Marshall Plan, it was the foreign policy version of the domestic policy we'd been living since the 1980s. Free market, bare bones, they'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Colin Powell tried to warn W about this with Iraq. He's like, if we're going in there, oh my God, we own this country for a generation. We're going to have to spend trillions of dollars. And by the way, we can't just send soldiers. We're going to have to send teachers and civil engineers, people who know how to make the toilets flush. We're in it. And Bush was like, no. We're going to go bare bones. The free market the Iraqis will take care of themselves. Oops. So what we're seeing now is basically America trying to apply Reaganomics to our foreign policy, and look where it's got us.
Yeah.
I think most people that watch this, and this is, I don't know if it's it's because of social media, but people don't focus like we did when we had 3 networks and one newspaper per town, right? We become distracted. And when you mentioned, I was thinking of the Marshall Plan before we started talking. I always thought what a great lesson it was for us to learn. We didn't learn it after World War I. We did after World War II. And Germany and Japan are our strongest allies. Why couldn't we have done that then? And why can't we do it now?
It would have been expensive, and it would have taken courage. It would have taken deep courage by President Clinton to say, listen, your taxes, I can't cut them, and they may even have to go up for just a little bit, and you're going to have to deal with a few more potholes because if we don't invest now, your children and your grandchildren are going to be in a lot of trouble. And he didn't do that. The attitude was, everything is fine. Things are great. Tom and Roseanne are going to be married forever. It's just we're living our best life in the 1990s. Let's just keep that party going.
Yeah, and I do understand how, it was a mistake. That was a mistake, and we can look back and say that was a mistake. We do a lot of things right here in this country, but that was a mistake. Now we know. Now there's no excuse. Now we know what the deal is, and it does worry me about the Reaganomics version of our democracy, where we're like, well, we're gonna keep it in here and keep it tight. I don't even think Reagan believed that, but I think he knew he tapped into something. He tapped into something, and once you tap into something as a politician, you're like, oh, this is what. Okay, I'm going to tap into this fear or this strength or whatever to get to get people to vote for me. But I still don't understand how Ron Johnson and JD Vance and all these guys are getting away with literally saying Russian talking points. They're exactly what they're saying on TV in Russia. But to sit there in the Senate and to repeat these things and not have someone on their staff go, you know what, that's exactly what Putin says. That means they don't care, that they are totally on board. So we had that problem with the Nazis in the 30s here in America, where people like repeating their stuff. It took a long, we didn't just go, okay, we don't like Hitler, we're going to war. You had people fighting for Hitler in the United States Senate, the House of Representatives. So it is a lot like that to me.
Well, the tragedy is with these guys, when they have their Russian talking points, those talking points resonate in parts of America, because just like we didn't do a Marshall Plan for the old Soviet Union, we didn't do one for America either. We have to remember that between the 405 freeway in LA and the Hudson River, there's a place called the United States of America that has been absolutely gutted by globalization. The jobs just left. The opioids came in. Nobody did anything to help these people. And there is an economic and cultural similarity about what's happening in rural Russia and rural Ohio. And, Biden is trying to turn this around. I think that we need to ring the bell a lot bigger to explain these things. What he's trying to do is reinvest for the next few generations. I've said he's the first Better Tomorrow president in my lifetime. But that's why these talking points are taken.
Your novel. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say that, the voters who vote for these hard right Republicans look around, and just like in Russia in the 90s, watch their industrial base be dismantled. Same thing happened to them. And our side did nothing. So why wouldn't they listen to a promise of hope? Because people will take a lie over silence any day.
Yeah. That's true. That's a great line. That's true.
You write metaphorically a lot, and I really dig that. And I remember after 9/11, Roger Rosenblatt wrote, "Irony is dead," and I refuse to believe it. But I do believe that nuance is on the operating table, and the pulse is weak. And can we afford to send messages out today that are nuanced, or do we have to bang people over the head with a hammer? It seems to me that when I have conversation, I go to the gym in an area that's kind of red around here, and I wear a Biden shirt just to provoke a reaction because I'm an asshole. But I do enjoy to have the conversation when they want to talk about the economy, and I'll say, all right, you say the economy sucks. Let's go over the metrics. And I try to have this conversation with them. Screw the nuance. I'm taking each step. I'm not going to talk about Trump's horrible statements about women or whatever, right? I try to do it step by step with them, and I see I can make some progress to a point, but I don't know which direction we should head.
I think we have to go many directions. I think you have to know your audience, and sometimes it has to come down to the individual person you're talking to. I was talking to someone about Gaza who was very much like, Israel's the bad guy, and just repeating the Hamas talking points. And so when they said and all I had to do was just engage quietly and calmly with each individual talking point. So when they say things like Gaza's an open air prison, I would said, well, a prison needs 4 walls. What about the Egyptian side? Oh, I'd never thought about that. Well, the Israeli bombing. And I said, yes, Hamas has built 400 plus miles of tunnels. There's not one civilian bomb shelter. Why is that? Oh, I'd never thought about that. Now, this was a person who was open to hearing these uncomfortable truths. I've also talked to other people who just said, no, I know what I believe. This is my happy place, queer for Palestine. And you just say, well, I can't, don't waste your time. I was talking to someone running for office, a Democrat, I won't say who and in which district, but when asked about why aren't you engaging younger voters, she said, look, I have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of resources, and I have to spend them wisely. And should I spend them getting 320-somethings to vote or 50-somethings to vote? Because that's been a more reliable voting base. So I think we need to know our audience and engage in different ways, because you can't have one message. It's not the 40s anymore. You can't roll out Humphrey Bogart. Listen, kid, buy a war bond. It doesn't work.
But also, they have the great Free Palestine is a great. Who could not be in favor of Free Palestine? It's like pro-life. They got the good hashtag pro-life. Who's not pro-life? Geez, life is good. And I think particularly young people grab onto this stuff. And you know, I mean, this is a very confusing time because Fox News and Trump say they're pro-Israel, and but then when Trump talks to the Palestinians or the Arab community, he's like, "Don't worry, I got your back." They're like, "We'll vote for you over Biden because we think you're better," and he's not better. He's anti-Muslim. He's all this stuff. So these people, the voters, have to get educated one way or another, just to the facts. And it might be that between these two guys, nobody's perfect, but I think I'm going to have to go with the one that's at least trying to solve this. The fact that Biden, people are mad on the right and the left about the Gaza war, that tells you he's doing something right, doesn't it? That everybody's mad. So, I mean, it's
also, you know, it also built, when you talk to people, it's also about building trust, right? It's about who are you talking to? This is the same. I've had this issue when I talk to the military trying to recruit the tech world. I'm like, you got to stop trying to recruit them and recruit recruiters within them who will then understand what you're doing and then go back to their tech world and be like, listen, you know me, you trust me when I tell you that this is important. So I think when we say we're talking to people, we got to be conscious about who's doing the talking and have they built a level of trust within the people that they're talking to.
Last thing, Hannah, because I know that you both got places to be, but I've been reading about, you know, this avian bird flu, and it's scaring the hell out of me because we're not going to be prepared if such a thing. The avian bird flu I've been worried about for years, and we're talking about plague kind of numbers here, if in fact worst case scenario. But you know, I want to jump back to something that you guys I know probably remember from the Reagan years. And even though people mocked him when he said this, I found it in a way kind of sweet and hopeful when he talked about, wouldn't it be great if we were attacked from outer space and we all came together as one to defend the planet? And you're laughing. And all my sisters who are hardcore liberals, and they freaking hated him. I remember thinking at the time, well, that kind of resonates with me. As a kid, I thought, right.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to feel good and better about tomorrow? I mean, we can piss on Reagan all we want, but when people are in their darkest moment, a positive message will resonate. Hope and a shining city on a hill, that's going to go a lot better than the other side who's like, oh, we suck and everyone sucks.
But that's what Trump's doing. He's running on America's garbage. It's a shithole country. It's dark and evil. And his fans are like, and I'm the only one that can fix it. And
I'm the only one.
You know, the cruelty in him, you know, they make fun of Pelosi's husband who got almost murdered with a hammer. The people over there, the Elon Musk, they think that's funny. And just the general cruelty about everything. And these people are like, which shows you human beings, we're basically good. But if our leaders start going, it's okay to do this, it's okay to do this, then if we get on, we become animals. We are capable of becoming animals, savages. And if somebody like Trump, who is the same as he's always been, I've known him 40 years, he's authentically terrible, but he's always been like that. It's the other people around him like, oh, that's okay to be like that. I'm going to be like that. I'm going to do these things. And then
Stephen Miller.
Give me,
Oh,
Steve
God, yeah.
Miller. Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
Max, give me some hope. Give me.
Oh,
Okay,
I mean,
we got an election.
I will give you. There's so much hope.
Mhm.
I mean, coming back from Europe, the Europeans, they're up and ready now. They're retooling all their industries. They're ramping up war production. They understand everything. They understand deterrence through strength. So they get it now. The fact that NATO got Sweden, I mean, the Swedes have been neutral. I mean, aliens would invade and they'd be like, no, they're in. Finland is in. So overseas, and by the way, if you want hope, our allies still look to us from Taiwan to Ukraine. They still believe in us in a way we need to believe in ourselves. And like I said, with Biden, the things he's doing, my grandchildren are going to be writing book reports. Things you don't even talk about, taking the lead out of the water. Do you know what that's going to do for overall healthcare and test scores and learning and brain development? I mean, my God, it's one of those things that we're not even acknowledging.
I always say that,
It'll be better tomorrow.
When we stopped using CFCs and started closing the ozone layer hole, I was like, look, we can do these things. When people said with climate change, you can't. Well, yeah, we've done it in the past. We literally affected the planet. And of course, we were more worried about the ultraviolet rays for creatures in the ocean, even more than humans, because of how that could work.
100%. And we can, I mean, when I think about when I grew up, everything smelled like cigarettes. Everybody smoked. When my parents pulled up to the gas station, they had to ask for unleaded gasoline, which meant there was lead in the gas. When I was growing up in LA, you couldn't see the mountains. You couldn't swim in the ocean. The amount of good and change that we have already accomplished would have been unbelievable a generation ago. And we finally got a guy in the White House who understands that. And if we don't get behind him, it's going to get all reversed. But if we do get behind him, what he can accomplish in another 4 years will be the stuff of history books.
Yeah. And how do we, Max, first of all, the prescriptions, like the last list of 10 prescriptions he was lowering, I had 3 of them. Because when you get older, you have a lot they were expensive before. But what do they need to do over the Biden campaign? Because us liberals, we are so scared. We're like criticizing each other and, he's got to get somebody else in there and all this. And I always say Biden and Kamala Harris are the only 2 people who could have won the last election. That combination of people that won it by 7 million, they saved America, I think. This is the deal. He doesn't get up there and yell. He doesn't get up. But what could they do? What one little thing could they do between now and November 5th what could they communicate to help it? Max?
I think they have to be full-throated, roaring about their accomplishments every minute of every day, because there are so many, and they're all over the country. I mean, literally every couple of months, a town in America goes lead-free. That needs to be huge. Somebody from the Democratic side needs to be there to just megaphone that out into the world. He's doing so much. And I think there is something on the liberal side where it's like, well, I don't like to toot my own horn. Toot it. Because the other side is tooting a horn of bullshit.
But also, Max, you have to explain to people, too, what happens if the lead stays there. That's the scary side, right? I don't know. I think that I used to say that a cynic was a skeptic with all the facts. But now I think an optimist is a cynic with children.
I think 100%. I think the generation that needs to lead the way in this election, honestly, is Gen X. My generation, I'm 52, because we're right in the middle. And when you're the sandwich generation, you have the ultimate responsibility. You've got kids, but you also have parents, and you're holding on to everything. And wow, does that give you perspective? I keep saying, stop blaming the kids, the young kids, the 20-something. They don't know. We didn't know. Young kids don't understand. And you can't blame them for that. The focus of the Biden campaign, I think, needs to be on the sandwich generation who can hold everything together and really gets it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I like that a lot. And we can't be wussies. There's always this sort of, we really have to not get in people's faces, although I've done that, but we have to be strong and be strong. And we can't be like, this is important. every time they say, well, this is the most important election, that's happened a couple times recently. This really is the most important because things could truly go down the tubes. I mean, I believe in democracy. I believe there are guardrails, but this is, if you like healthcare, if you're out there struggling like healthcare or lower prescriptions, whatever, which seems like a lot of Trump supporters do, you're going to lose all that. Nobody's going to be building bridges in your town. There's a lot going on. And so we got to just keep it up. Max, you're the best.
Yes.
You really are. Because you lure people in with your intelligence and your charm, and then they hear stuff, which is not the easiest job in the world. So keep it up, buddy.
Please
Thanks,
stay well,
bud.
okay?
All right, you take care, guys.
And we'll
Thank you,
talk to you
buddy.
soon. Again, Max Brooks, thank you so much, bud. See you.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. You forget who he is when he's on talking a lot of this policy stuff because he knows more than the people interviewing him, which is
also,
always great.
Max is one of those guys that has a lot to say, and he says it well. And he's always been nice to me to come on, whether I'm radio shows or this, and it's good stuff. I know you got to roll, but we will get this. We're going to do this again soon. On our list of guests. Who was your list of guests that you like?
Well, it's funny because Lauren today, you wrote the girl from that has the Alito thing, and we talked several times, and I knew what was coming. I knew what she done. And I posted, she said, will you post the day before to kind of say something big is coming? And she told me what it was. And then I posted exactly what it was. She went to the Alito. She went to the Supreme Court. And 5 minutes later, she's like, take that down, delete that. I go, oh my gosh, it took me a long time to write that. So I took it down real quick. And then this. So, I want to meet Adam Kinzinger. Kinzing,
Adam.
We communicate through the DMs.
Let's get him on then. We'll try to next week.
I really like him. Swalwell's got to do it for us. Swalwell's is also close to Lauren.
I'll tell you what, you go after Swalwell. I'll go after Kinzinger. We'll get somebody for one of those two for next week. How's that sound?
Yeah. Okay, I'll do my best. We'll get on it. But I like that you're doing a great job with this. So thank you, Chip.
TomArnoldComedy.com. I'm Chip Franklin. This is Really Political. Till next time. Thank you.